Welcome to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. This podcast features powerful hypnosis, so do not listen while driving or operating machinery. This recording is not suitable for those with epilepsy or severe mental health issues. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Hi, it's Adam here, and in this episode of The Hypnotist, I'm going to be doing offering a few tips specifically designed for either new or aspiring hypnotherapists. And the reason for this is that as the podcast and the YouTube channel has grown, sometimes newer hypnotherapists that aren't really in business yet reach out to me and just kind of ask if I would give them any kind of tips or insight that could help them improve the probability of success. So again, this episode isn't going to be a hypnosis session. So if you are looking for a hypnosis session, just skip this track and find another one. There's about 500 to choose from. If you are in the category of someone that is either a new hypnotherapist or you are an individual that wants to become a hypnotherapist, then this episode should and could be quite useful for you. And I think the starting point is probably worth me sharing an anecdote of something that my trainer and the establishment that I studied hypnotherapy with shared right at the end of the course. And I studied with the LCCH, which stands for the London College of Clinical Hypnotherapy, and quite a well-regarded institution in the field of hypnotherapy. Was one of the only course in the UK at the time that was accredited with a British university. So I'm one of the very rare hypnotherapists that actually have a postgraduate hypnotherapy qualification. So basically 2/3 of a master's degree. And towards the end of the final element of the course, before you could convert it into a master's degree, they were giving everyone what I think was designed to be a bit of a motivational pep talk, but it kind of had the opposite effect. And what they were saying is that under 3% of the people that actually got to this level, so we're talking like 3 years worth of study, post-degree level in hypnotherapy, under 3% would actually be able to turn it into a viable business that would actually go on to be credible hypnotherapists. And I think what they were what the intention was, is to say, look, don't get complacent. You've got the qualifications. Now go out there and actually turn this into something that isn't going to fizzle out. But I was having the teas and coffees and sat there with the rest of the people that qualified at the same time of me. And they were left with this kind of deflated feeling of spending thousands of pounds to get the qualifications in this field of hypnotherapy from a very credible organization. And we're told that 97% of all the people that do it don't do anything with it. So they were left with this kind of feeling of being deflated, of being lost. Now, part of my mindset was that, well, I'll do whatever it takes to be that 3% that actually does something with it. But what was missing, I felt, in that organization is that they taught people the theory of hypnotherapy, provided with lots of example scripts, but then identified a problem that 97% of hypnotherapists that get the qualifications don't then become proper hypnotherapists, and then didn't offer a solution to that. They could have easily had an additional module that taught them all of the business skills required for them to go out there in the world and become a viable hypnotherapist, but they didn't. And therefore, I felt that that was a bit either incompetent, because they knew that 97% of people that did the course would do nothing with it, in which case the whole pretense of their marketing, which is hypnotherapists can earn hundreds of pounds an hour and you can learn to be a hypnotherapist, knowing full well that such a high percentage of people wouldn't do anything with that hypnotherapy. So I thought it was either disingenuous or incompetent. At worst, it's kind of a little bit bait and switch. You lure people into the high income potential of being a hypnotherapist, knowing full well that people aren't going to actually do that. So in this particular episode, I wanted to provide some of the tips that I wish someone would have given me when I had just became a qualified hypnotherapist, or even these kind of tips before, when I was thinking about becoming a hypnotherapist. So this episode really is me sharing a few tips as someone that has been doing this for a few years, regularly sees clients of all different, kind of caliber. So yes, I do work with high profile, the rich and famous, but equally just people that are very motivated to solve a problem. So I thought I'd share a few tips. So tips over the last few years that people have either asked questions or just, wanted to kind of learn from me in terms of how to do it. So tip number one is, first of all, figure out why you want to be a therapist in the first place. And hopefully you're listening to this before you've spent any money on any kind of training or courses or anything like that. What is the reason why you're doing it? And if the reason is because you want to go out there and help people with their mental health, and you want to make a positive difference on the quality of people's lives, you want to help people, I think that's a very, very good reason for becoming a therapist. If, however, the primary motivation is to make money, I would say there are thousands of much more lucrative ways of making money than therapy. So if your primary motivation is financial in nature, I would say it's a really bad idea, because most people that are hypnotherapists, I saw a post on social media by Bob Burns, a very competent Scottish hypnotherapist, and he shared that the average amount that the average hypnotherapist makes a year is about £6,000. That's the equivalent of about $8,000. That is not a livable income. Now, that's not to say that there aren't ways of dramatically increasing the amount of income that you could make from therapy and being a hypnotherapist. Firsthand, I know that there is a lot of money that can be made in hypnotherapy, but not if it's your primary motive. It should really be the side effect of you having a positive impact on people's lives. So tip number one, first and foremost, figure out why you want to be a therapist. And let's say that you have a good enough reason. My tip number two is to then find a competent trainer or a course that you can learn the essential, let's say, skills but theories of hypnotherapy. Now, although I learned a lot from the LCCH, London College of Clinical Hypnotherapy, they are no longer accredited with the University of West London. They had a change of ownership midway through because the original founder died partway through my course. They had kind of like almost like a management takeover of the company. I found them a bit too reliant on scripts, a lot of the sessions, for example, the actual kind of classes were covering material that was already provided us beforehand, so I didn't feel that was an effective use of time. And there was a lack of critique or practical feedback on the actual, let's say, technical elements of doing hypnosis. So I'd love to be able to recommend them because that's who I studied with, but I wouldn't. In fact, I would, and I've not worked with either of these organizations, but I have heard very good things from good therapists. So the trainers that I would recommend, and they're online, so wherever you are in the world, you can kind of find them. The first I would say is the Mike Mandel Academy. I've seen Mike and Chris speak at various conferences around the world. Very good trainers. They host one of my favorite hypnosis podcasts called Brain Software. And they're good trainers, and they have an online academy. They have a free trial, so you can kind of try before you buy. So I would recommend that, just because firsthand I know that they know what they're talking about. The Jacquins, so you've got Anthony and Freddie Jacquin, very well regarded in terms of their dedication to the world of hypnosis. Again, online academy. But I also know firsthand people that have actually worked with them. They've kind of been involved in cohorts, so I know that there is an element of group work and kind of practical feedback given. So although I've not worked with the Jacquins as part of their academy, I could recommend it based on referrals and just the competency of people that I know that have done that. And I've also heard very good things about some of the training offered by Carl Smith. So again, not done it personally, but I've heard good things. So it's worth checking out those three. So Mike Mandel, the Jacquins Hypnosis Academy, and Carl Smith has a training resource as well. So check out those, or reach out, and for those hypnotherapists that are well regarded, you could reach out and ask them who they studied with or who they would recommend. But I think in this world of technology, online learning is not a bad thing, but you do want an element of, ideally, the practical element of that as well. So getting people that you can actually kind of practice one-on-one with and create a peer group. So do your research and find a good course would be my tip number 2. Tip number 3 would be to do the homework yourself, in terms of not just doing the course, but do the background reading on understanding the history of hypnosis. All the way back from Coué and Mesmer, and those that kind of made hypnosis a bit more popular in the kind of 50s and 60s. So the Ericksons and the Ellmans and the Boyle kind of theories and approaches. Do some homework into some of the characters in the history of hypnosis. Understand the theories, the inductions, the principles. Lots of books on that. Go on Amazon. Look at those that are highly rated. But dig into a bit of the history, I would say, because I think that's either going to get you excited about learning more, or it's going to turn you off and you get bored, in which case this probably isn't the right thing for you. So really get to grips with the background and the principles of hypnosis. My tip number 4 would be to think of hypnotherapy as a set of tools that works really well with other tools. So a lot of people will work with me and they'll say, well, what do I actually use in the sessions? And of course, I'm known as a hypnotherapist, therefore I use lots of hypnosis. But I also love some of the principles of neurolinguistic programming. I like the tenets, if you like, the core principles. I also think that a lot of the third wave therapies in terms of CBT align very well with the structure of a good elicitation process, a diagnostic process, and then working with clients. So I use a lot of, for example, ACT, so acceptance and commitment therapy. I love Emerson's work on, originally it was ego states, but now resource states. So these kind of principles, they work really well alongside hypnosis. So I would say, yes, learn hypnotherapy, but also get to grips with some of the other principles, the other techniques that work really well alongside hypnosis, because it's going to make you more of a well-rounded hypnotherapist. So that would be my tip number 4. Tip number 5, which I think is the bit where a lot of people go wrong in this kind of realm of hypnotherapy, is they don't get enough practical experience. And I think that's why a lot of therapists become too dependent on scripts. I think they're operating from the wrong belief system, the wrong pretense, which is almost looking at hypnosis as some kind of magic spell that you read at a client, and nothing could be further from the truth, in my opinion. That hypnosis is this kind of psychodynamic loop between you and the client, and the body, the facial expressions, the tone of voice is giving you all this information that if you calibrate and have that sensory acuity, you can kind of figure out intuitively what to say and how to change different approaches to make sure that you're making progress, and then obviously test your work. But to do that, you need lots of practical experience. And I think one of the things where people go wrong is that they only practice with other people studying, in which case that's not true practice, because you've got people that could just be playing along and not giving you a realistic feedback loop of what's actually going on. So the way in order, and I've done this on many different occasions, to get lots of practical experience, one of the most powerful words in marketing is free. Now, once you become an established therapist, you can actually charge a high premium, because we're in the business of changing people's lives, and that has a very high value. They're not paying for your time, they're paying for the change, in which case you could put a premium on your work. But to begin with, you need to develop competency. And the only way to develop competency as a therapist is to get lots and lots of practical experience. And the easiest way to get that practical experience is offer to work for people for free. Now, that could be too generic, so you have to be very specialist. So you could use your social media, and if you want to specialize in a particular area, for example, let's say it's weight loss, or let's say it's anxiety, then you could put a social media post and say something along the lines of that you're developing new techniques or new approaches to deal with weight loss, and you're looking for volunteers that you can actually test your work in exchange for feedback. Now, one of my belief systems is that you learn before you earn, so that you acquire the skills before you have the right to charge people. And unfortunately, some people, they run into this industry and they try and charge crazy amounts even before they've got good at it, which makes no sense, because then they're not going to get the referrals, they're not going to get good feedback from their clients. So you need to get good, and the way to get good is get lots of practical experience, but also get feedback, and then reflect on the work that you're doing. Now, the good news is if you work for free, and occasionally I do free sessions with clients, but my caveat is that either I'm testing something brand new out, in which case I'm happy to learn before I earn, or I want to be able to use that content, for, let's say, a YouTube kind of session. So confidentiality is built into what I do, but occasionally, if you see me working with real clients on YouTube, it's because I've done a free session with them, and they've given me consent to share that content, in which case that's why it's on there. Otherwise, you would never know who I've worked with, because it's 100% confidential. So offering to work with people for free in very specific areas is a great way to get lots and lots of practical experience, but you're setting up the pretense that you're testing new approaches, and that's why it's free. So therefore, you're not devaluing your proposition when you then charge a premium later. So get lots of practical experience. Tip number 6 is to specialize. If you call yourself a hypnotherapist, and back when I started, I looked at there's lots of hypnotherapy directories, particularly in the UK, and I looked at website after website after website to look at what other hypnotherapists were doing to, let's say, advertise their services or promote their services. And the vast majority are generalists. So you visit their website and they say, I'm a hypnotherapist, and normally their USP is that they're in a particular location. So they're in a region, and they say, and I can help with and then they have a list of like 100 different conditions, everything from nail biting, smoking cessation, fear of flying, fear of public speaking, weight loss, anxiety, you name it, it's on there. And they're operating from a false belief system that the more things they say they can help with, the bigger their potential client list is. And nothing could be further from the truth. Because if you say, I do 1,000 things, people are going to come to the correct conclusion that you're not very good at those things because you haven't specialized. And if you think about how you think of the medical profession, if your dentist said that they also did brain surgery and also did dermatology and also did, let's say childbirth, you'd be thinking, well, how good at any of those things can they really be if they do so many different things? In the medical profession, they specialize. And the reason that they specialize is because the more time you spend in a particular area, the more competent you become because you pick up on the distinctions, the nuances of that particular area. So I would say, specialize. Figure out an area where you can have the biggest impact, either through personal experience or knowledge or passion or enthusiasm, but find an area that is big enough for you to find a client base, but niche enough for you to become an authority in that particular area. Okay, so find a niche. Tip number 7 would be to get ongoing training, sharpen the saw. Once you do your course, that is the beginning of your learning. It's not the end of your learning. So attend conferences, find YouTube channels and podcasts that can kind of give you that CPD for free. Occasionally you can find resources. So for a while I was co-hosting a Clubhouse room where we would just talk about all things hypnosis. There are YouTube channels. There are low-cost Zoom webinars that you can attend that can kind of bolster your knowledge on a particular area. There are also lots of free or very low-cost courses available online that you can buy. So the original training that you do to become a hypnotherapist is not the end of your learning. That's the very beginning. So get more insight, really, I would say, from ongoing training. Tip number 8 is to spend as much time learning the business skills as you spent learning the hypnosis skills. And I mentioned about this on a previous episode that the biggest mistake that a lot of therapists make is that they believe that if they become a better therapist, or actually I should say if they become a more qualified therapist, then clients will just beat a path to their doorway. And that is not true. It is totally not true. You need to have a way of being able to build a brand, to enable people to find you, to know your credentials, to be able to buy your services. And that could be one-to-one sessions, that could be digital products, that could be ways of taking what you know and what you can give to the world, and you need to monetize that, and you need to find a way for people to acquire what you have. And if you don't, there will be people that are out there in the world that you will never be able to help because you never figured out how to get your skill set and ability to impact people in a way where you could actually impact them. So I would say figure out how to actually have a viable business. Unless, of course, your original intention, back to tip 1, figure out why you want to be a therapist. If you just wanted to be a therapist to work on your own personal stuff, well, then you don't need to. And if it was just to kind of, for the joy of learning something new and gathering information, totally fine. Then you don't need to figure out how to get new clients. But if part of your goal was to genuinely impact lives of people around you, then the business side is a dirty word for a lot of therapists because they just want to do the therapy bit. But acquiring clients is how you do the therapy bit, because the more well known you are, the better you market yourself, the more credentials that you have, the more efficient your processes are, the more clients you can serve, and therefore the bigger impact you can have on the world. And this podcast is just one of many examples of that, because within the next month we will have hit 2 million downloads, and therefore there is hundreds of thousands of people out there in the world that have been impacted in some way as a result of the hypnotherapy that I've produced, that wouldn't have happened had I not consistently created that content. And some of you may or may not know this, but the downloads for the first 2 or 3 months were like 5 or 6 a day. Now they're approaching 7,000. So you have to be consistent at these approaches if you're going to have a genuine impact on the world. So, figure out how to get clients if that's what you want, how to build a business around it. And then the final tip, which is completely self-serving and a total plug for my own services, is to find a mentor. Now, the mentor does not need to be me. I would say if you're looking for a mentor to help you in the actual practical hypnosis bits, to shadow sessions or give you feedback on some of the therapy that you're actually doing, I'm probably not the right person for you, just because I don't have too much time. If, however, you're looking for a mentor that can help you to actually grow your therapy business, or to tap into the opportunities of being a therapist in a world where people are happy to do transactions online, so one-to-one sessions, for example, or digital products, or online courses and things like that, then I might be a useful mentor for you, because I have a track record in that particular area. If you're listening to this and you would like to test me out as a potential mentor for you, there will be a link very close to this audio for you to book a highly discounted 60-minute mentorship session with me. And then you'll know in that 60 minutes whether or not an ongoing mentor relationship is the right thing or not. You'll get a lot of value even if you just work with me for that 60 minutes, but hopefully you'll be so impressed with what we cover in that 60 minutes that you'll want to have more of an ongoing working relationship. So those would be my tips. I'm going to summarize them again. So figure out why you want to be a therapist in the first place. Find a good trainer or a course. Understand the background, the theories, the history, the principles. Think of hypnotherapy as a set of tools that work well with other tools. So don't just learn hypnosis. Get lots and lots of practical experience. Specialize in a particular niche that you can be passionate about. Get ongoing training, so you're sharpening the saw, so that you're not getting rusty and you're able to be the very best in your field. Figure out, whether through me or other people, how to get regular clients, how to actually scale what you do to be able to have regular clients so you can actually have a decent income. Because if you don't have a decent income from hypnotherapy, then it will fizzle out and you won't be doing it in a year's time. So figure out how to get regular clients, and then find a mentor. But find the right mentor to help you in whichever your biggest goal is for your stage of your hypnotherapy practice. And 100%, if you're going to have a mentor, make sure they have an absolute track record in the very thing that they're offering to help you with. And unfortunately, we live in a world where there are coaches for so many different things. And I have a podcast called Modern Mindset, so I've interviewed hundreds of coaches, and it's not common, but it is the case that sometimes the coaches are the very worst at the thing that they're coaching on. So you have relationship coaches that are just kind of atrocious in relationships, or you have, I've interviewed wealth coaches that have, negative net worth and just live in rented apartments. So just be diligent, I would say, in terms of choosing a mentor, so that you're working with someone that walks the talk, that actually does the very thing that you need help with. Unfortunately, there are so many charlatans out there that will take your money and can't back up or provide any evidence in the area that they are trying to help you with. And that's why I love it when people ask me, like, where's the proof? There's two main coaching styles that I do. One is wealth coaching, and the other is mentorship for hypnotherapists that want to grow a hypnotherapy business. If you do that kind of subsidized session with me, I would want you to ask me that question, show me the evidence, because I'm in a very strong position to show you, whether from a wealth perspective or from a growing a hypnotherapy practice, I can show you that. And the reason why I'm saying that is not to brag, but to highlight that a lot of coaches and a lot of mentors can't. And if they can't, or they're too unwilling to provide evidence, it's probably because they're not very good in that area and they're more interested in taking your money than actually providing value for you. So be diligent, because there's some sneaky people out there. Hope you found that useful. Again, just to plug one final time, there is a subsidized mentorship session that is available at £19.99 if you're in the UK, or it would be the equivalent of about $24. So massively discounted, 60-minute mentorship session with me. If you're interested, if you're not, don't worry. But if you are, you can do that session with no obligation to working with me after that point. But hopefully you would get a lot of value from that 60-minute session anyway. Hope you found these tips useful. And probably my next session will actually be a hypnosis session, so I'm going to go back to doing more of those. But hopefully you found this useful, and I'll see you again soon.
Thank you for listening to The Hypnotist with Adam Cox, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. To automatically receive the latest episodes, please subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, please share this episode with just one friend you think it could help. And if this episode helped you, please leave us a 5-star review.